Let us talk about government. This subject helps you understand how countries are run, who makes decisions, and why citizens obey those decisions. In your exams, government questions test your understanding of basic concepts like power, authority, legitimacy, and sovereignty. This is SS1, Topic 1. By the end of this lesson, you will understand what government means, the difference between power and authority, the meaning of legitimacy and sovereignty, and how to answer exam questions. Take your notes. Let us go. First, what is government? Government can be defined in three ways. As a process, government is the act of governing or ruling. This includes making laws, enforcing laws, and interpreting laws. As an institution, government is the body of people and organizations that make and enforce laws. This includes the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. As a field of study, government is the academic subject that studies how societies are governed. It examines political systems, political behavior, and public policies. In simple terms, government is the group of people who have the authority to make and enforce laws in a country. Every country has a government. Without a government, there would be chaos. No one would pay taxes. No one would obey traffic rules. Criminals would not be punished. The government makes decisions, collects taxes, builds roads, provides schools, and maintains the army and police. The government also represents the country in international affairs. It signs treaties, declares war, and maintains diplomatic relations with other countries. Now let me explain the state. The state is often confused with government. The state is a permanent organization. It includes four essential elements. The first element is population, which means the people who live in the state. A state cannot exist without people. The second element is territory, which means the land, water, and airspace that belong to the state. Every state has defined borders. The third element is government, which means the institution that makes and enforces laws. The fourth element is sovereignty, which means supreme power within the state. The government is temporary. It changes when leaders change through elections, resignations, or coups. The state continues. For example, Nigeria has had many governments since independence in 1960. Leaders have come and gone, but Nigeria, the state, continues. This is the key difference between government and state. Government is a part of the state. The state is larger and permanent. The government is one of its organs. Now let me explain power. Power is the ability to compel someone to do something that they would not otherwise do. Power involves force or the threat of force. When you have power, you can make others obey you even if they do not want to. Power is not the same as influence. Influence persuades. Power compels. Power can be exercised in many ways. The most obvious is physical force. The police have the power to arrest you. The military has the power to use weapons. The courts have the power to sentence you to prison. There are different forms of power. Military power is the ability to use armed forces to compel obedience. Economic power is the ability to use money and resources to influence others. Political power is the authority given by the Constitution to make decisions. Social power is the influence that comes from status, fame, or reputation. Power can be acquired in several ways. Inheritance is one way. A king or queen may inherit power from their parents. In traditional societies, power passes from father to son. Force is another way. A military coup seizes power through violence. Many African countries experienced coups after independence. Election is another way. Citizens vote for leaders who then have the power to govern. This is the most common way in democracies. Charisma is another way. Some leaders gain power because people are attracted to their personality and vision. Nelson Mandela had charismatic power. Persuasion is another way. Some leaders rise through debate and argument. Wealth is another way. Rich people can buy influence and power. Power is exercised through the government, the police, the military, the courts, and other institutions. Power can be used for good or for evil. It depends on who holds it and how they use it. Now let me explain authority. Authority is the right to exercise power. Power is about force. Authority is about right. When a person has authority, others obey because they believe that person has the legitimate right to command. Authority is based on consent, not force. People obey authority voluntarily. They do not need to be threatened. There are three types of authority according to the sociologist Max Weber. Traditional authority is based on custom and tradition. Kings, chiefs, and elders have traditional authority. People obey because that is how it has always been. Obedience is a habit. In Nigeria, traditional rulers like the Oba of Lagos and the Sultan of Sokoto have traditional authority. Rational legal authority is based on laws and rules. Elected officials, judges, and civil servants have rational legal authority. People obey because the law says they have the right to command. The Constitution gives them this authority. In a democracy, the president has rational legal authority. Charismatic authority is based on the personal qualities of the leader. People obey because they believe in the leader's vision and personality. Charismatic leaders inspire devotion. Examples include Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela. Charismatic authority is often unstable because it depends on the leader's personal qualities. When the leader dies, the authority may disappear. The difference between power and authority is very important for your exam. Power is the ability to compel obedience through force or threat. Authority is the right to command based on consent and legitimacy. Power is based on fear. Authority is based on respect. Power can exist without authority. A military dictator may have power but no legitimate authority. He rules by the gun. People obey because they fear arrest or death. Authority can exist without power. A traditional chief may have authority but no army to enforce it. People obey because they respect his position. In a stable democracy, the government has both power and authority. It has the power to arrest lawbreakers. It has the authority because it was elected. The people consent to be governed. Now let me explain legitimacy. Legitimacy is the acceptance of authority as right and proper. When a government is legitimate, citizens obey its laws because they believe the government has the right to make those laws. Legitimacy is what turns power into authority. Without legitimacy, a government must rely on force to make people obey. With legitimacy, people obey voluntarily. Legitimacy is the foundation of stable government. Governments that lack legitimacy are unstable. They are often overthrown. What determines legitimacy? Several factors. Popular support is the most important factor. When the people accept the government, it is legitimate. The government must have the consent of the governed. Elections can give legitimacy. When leaders are elected fairly and freely, they have legitimacy. The people chose them. Tradition can give legitimacy. When people are used to a certain system, they accept it. Long-established governments have legitimacy simply because they have been there for a long time. The Constitution can give legitimacy. When a government follows the Constitution, it is seen as legitimate. The Constitution is the supreme law. Governments that violate the Constitution lose legitimacy. Performance can give legitimacy. When a government provides security, jobs, roads, schools, and hospitals, people accept it. A government that fails to provide basic services loses legitimacy. International recognition can also give legitimacy. When other countries accept a government, it gains legitimacy. Being a member of the United Nations is a sign of legitimacy. Ideology can also give legitimacy. Some governments claim legitimacy based on a particular ideology, like socialism or democracy. Now let me explain sovereignty. Sovereignty is the supreme power of a state to make laws and govern itself without interference from outside. A sovereign state is independent. It does not answer to any higher authority. Sovereignty is the most important characteristic of a state. Without sovereignty, a state is not truly a state. It is a colony or a territory. Sovereignty has two aspects. Internal sovereignty means that the state has supreme power over all individuals and groups within its territory. No one inside the state is above the law. The government makes the laws, and everyone must obey. Even the president must obey the law. Internal sovereignty means the state is the highest authority inside its borders. External sovereignty means that the state is independent from outside control. No other country can dictate what the state does. The state can make its own foreign policy. It can sign treaties. It can declare war. It can join international organizations. External sovereignty means the state is equal to other states in international law. Sovereignty can be limited in some ways. International laws and treaties limit what states can do. When a country signs a treaty, it agrees to follow certain rules. Membership in international organizations like the United Nations, the African Union, and ECOWAS limits sovereignty. The country must follow the rules of these organizations. Economic dependence on other countries can limit sovereignty. If a country depends on foreign aid or loans, it may have to do what the lender wants. Military weakness can also limit sovereignty. A weak country may be forced to accept the demands of a stronger country. Globalization also limits sovereignty. What happens in other countries affects you. You cannot isolate yourself completely. But in theory, sovereignty is absolute. Every country wants to be fully sovereign. Losing sovereignty is seen as a loss of independence. Now let me compare these four concepts. Power is the ability to force obedience. Authority is the right to command. Legitimacy is the acceptance of that right. Sovereignty is the supreme power of a state. Power can exist without authority. A dictator has power, but not legitimate authority. Authority exists when power is seen as legitimate. A democratically elected president has both power and authority. Sovereignty is the highest form of power. It belongs to the state, not to any individual. The government exercises sovereignty on behalf of the state. But the government does not own sovereignty. The state does. A common exam question asks you to define government and explain the difference between government and state. Here is a sample answer. Government is the group of people who make and enforce laws. It is temporary and changes when leaders change. The state is the permanent organization that includes the people, territory, government, and sovereignty. The state continues even when the government changes. For example, Nigeria has had many governments since 1960, but Nigeria the state remains. The government is an organ of the state, like the executive, legislature, and judiciary. The state is larger and more permanent than the government. Another exam question asks you to distinguish between power and authority. Here is your answer. Power is the ability to compel obedience through force or threat. Authority is the right to command based on legitimacy. Power is based on fear. Authority is based on respect. Power can be exercised without authority, as in a military dictatorship. Authority can be exercised without physical power, as in a traditional chief. In a democratic government, leaders have both power and authority. The president has the power to enforce laws and the authority because he was elected. Another exam question asks you to explain the meaning of legitimacy and how a government can gain it. Here is your answer. Legitimacy is the acceptance of authority as right and proper. A government gains legitimacy through popular support, free and fair elections, adherence to the constitution, good performance, tradition, and international recognition. When a government is legitimate, citizens obey its laws voluntarily. When a government lacks legitimacy, it must rely on force to compel obedience. Legitimacy is essential for stable government. Governments without legitimacy are often overthrown. Another exam question asks you to define sovereignty and identify its two aspects. Here is your answer. Sovereignty is the supreme power of a state to make laws and govern itself without outside interference. Internal sovereignty means the state has supreme power over all individuals and groups within its territory. No one inside the state is above the law. External sovereignty means the state is independent from outside control. No other country can dictate what a sovereign state does. Sovereignty is the most important characteristic of a state. Without sovereignty, a state is not truly a state. Here is what you need to take away. Government is the group that makes and enforces laws. The state is permanent and has four elements. Power is the ability to force obedience. Authority is the right to command. Legitimacy is the acceptance of authority. Sovereignty is the supreme power of the state. Understanding these four concepts is the foundation of government. They appear in every exam. Practice these definitions until you can say them without looking at your notes. When you have them down, move to topic 2.